Hello and welcome to Jumping Hurdles in the e-commerce customer journey. I'm Samantha Hurd, Content Manager here at Be Interactive, and I'll be your moderator for today. Today we're lucky to have the Bluesnap team with us to discuss the common hurdles in the customer journey and how to solve them. We will touch on key abandonment data, discuss shopping cart and checkout abandonment hurdles, and share on-site optimizations you can implement to overcome those challenges. Now, before we get started, let's just go over a few housekeeping items. If you've joined us before, you know the drill. If you're new, welcome, and please be sure to connect with us live on Twitter, as we are live tweeting this webinar. You can reach us at the handle VUnited and you can reach Bluesnap at Bluesnap Inc. and use the hashtag #DisplayToSale. Now, we encourage and invite you to ask questions using Twitter or the question panel in GoToMeeting. And after the presentation, we'll have time to answer a few of those questions. And of course, we all know we live in an on-demand world, so we are recording this webinar for later playback and to pass along to any colleagues who couldn't join us today. Now let's introduce today's experts. First off, we have Scott Fitzgerald. He's the SVP of Marketing at Bluesnap. And we have Terry Mock, Chief Financial Officer here at Be, both joining us today. So thanks for being here, guys.
Hi, thanks, Samantha. Hi, Terry, how you doing?
Good.
Excellent.
Well, thanks, Samantha.
Now, before Terry jumps in, let's just set the tone for today. We talk a lot at Be about the e-commerce challenge, and there's a massive spend on paid media to drive relevant audiences to websites. But if you look below, a much bigger number, 4 trillion to be exact, is left behind in shopping carts. There's a disconnect in the industry with this huge spend and all this money being left behind. But the good news is there's an opportunity to close the gap between ad spend and what it takes to create conversions. So as you see on the right, we typically only see a 5% natural return rate after someone abandons their cart. So that means we need to create a fully engaged, individualized customer experience throughout the entire purchase journey in order for consumers to complete their purchases. And then on the right, you can see our abandonment data by sector. So these are the average abandonment rates we see based on Be's 10,000 global clients. If we can just lower these rates by 5 to 10%, you can really increase your recovered revenue. Now, in order to take back some of that 4 trillion being left behind, you need to address the risks that cause the high cart attrition rates, specifically addressing the on-site hurdles of shopping cart abandonment and checkout abandonment. Now I'll hand it off to Terry to discuss common pain points in cart abandonment and ways to solve them.
Okay, well, thanks, Samantha. Scott and I are double teaming today on the topic of risk throughout the buying process. I'm going to get us started. We're going to talk about site abandonment, cart abandonment, and unconverted visitors. Now, these all occur prior to the checkout and payment process, which Scott will be covering later.
So, and Terry, on these, do you find that these are all related, or are these really independent issues, each of them?
Yes, well, I think all of these pain points are related in the sense that they all pertain to a user coming to your site and leaving for various reasons, whether they're bouncing from your landing page or abandoning from your cart. So in that sense, they're very, very similar. However, the way you address them and the types of tools and technologies and best practices you apply can be very different. You can apply any number of them together or separately, and we'll cover some of those now.
Cool.
Okay, so as a marketer, you spend a significant amount of your budget driving traffic to your site. This is done with digital advertising, SEO, PPC, and so forth. However, the fact is that 55% of visitors spend fewer than 15 seconds on your website. They come to do comparison shopping, they're researching your products, and sometimes they're just not yet ready to buy. Other times they may be distracted by a phone call or a visitor. So customers are basically impatient people, and they have such a high percentage of visitors leaving your site within 15 seconds of arrival. It's really important to be proactive in engaging them immediately. Okay, so there are a number of on-site engagement best practices that can be applied. Now, if you have a user who's about to abandon your site, you can connect with that visitor in real time using on-site overlays with targeted messaging. On-site prompts that fire upon exit intent help to reduce site abandonments. The best place to pull users back is when they're still on your page, before they even leave in the first place. Prompts and promotions triggered on exit intent are a powerful and proactive tool that eliminates the difficult step of trying to bring them back. Now, alternatively, you can engage after a period of inactivity and, of course, on exit. Including on-site incentives, such as a percentage off on an item that you see in this example, will further help to keep them on site. By setting up criteria filters based on different purchase behaviors, such as cart content, basket value, geolocation, and device type, marketers can trigger personalized, relevant discount offers to re-engage shoppers and incentivize them to complete their purchase. So for an online sporting goods store, a visitor abandoning with soccer cleats in the shopping cart will be shown an overlay with a 10% discount offer on all footwear. But if a soccer ball is left instead, a different promotion for a 10% discount on all soccer equipment can be shown. Now, of course, with these promos, we live in a social world, and that means like customers like to share the incentives they receive with their networks, on message boards, and unfortunately, even on promo code aggregation sites. To combat this, set your incentives to auto-insert once a user clicks to accept the promo and stay in your site. This eliminates an extra step in the journey and prevents that promo code from leaking to a larger audience and affecting your profit margins. The customer experience is also evolving, and users are now treating shopping carts sort of like wish lists. So another way to stay engaged with your customer is basket bookmarking. You can give customers the option to save their current cart and have it sent to their inbox. You'll stay front of mind when they receive their recreated basket. So we know that we've seen customers use on-site overlays and they work. We found that typical conversion rates from on-site overlays can average 30% or more. So that's a significant way to bring back revenues. Now, on our next Pinpoint, it addresses cart abandonment. This stat here shows that the average rate of cart abandonment in 2015 was 68.95%. So IBM study shows that 2/3 of the time online shoppers add to their basket only to leave the items behind. So for e-commerce merchants, this represents a significant number of already interested customers, and the opportunity exists to recover so many of these would-be sales. Email remarketing is a tool to reach out to those who have already abandoned. We can engage with these visitors post-abandonment by using real-time user data to send relevant and personalized messages, which encourage them to return and complete their transaction. Given that the user has shown clear intent, a follow-up email delivered with the right tone, right content, and the right offers can recover the lost revenues and opportunities from them. These abandoned visitors have already reached out to your business, so it's really high time that you reach back up to them.
So, and Terry, on this, I've received these kinds of emails before, and I've always wondered what's the range or the percentage of shoppers that you would actually expect to be able to recover through this tactic?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's a great segue to the next slide. Well, here's an example of a timely set of reminders in a cascaded email campaign. That's sending multiple emails over a period of time, customized with different messages and content to match the user's position on the purchasing path. So imagine a busy mom who has abandoned her shopping cart. It makes sense to send her re-engagement emails 20 minutes, 24 hours, and 48 hours later. Engaging with these three messages can keep your brand top of mind and prompt her to return to finish her purchase. Now, your young mother may have started browsing on your site and then left to help one of her kids get a snack. The first email she gets is, "We miss you," and it serves as an initial reminder that she's left some things behind in her cart. Then, you don't need to incentivize right away. Instead, add a little bit of a personal touch to these emails with product feeds. This will remind her of what she's left in her cart and hopefully entice her to return. You can also eliminate unnecessary steps by including a call to action button that goes directly back to her cart. With emails 2 and 3, your busy mom probably, didn't check her first email, and that's okay. because that's what email 2 and 3 will do. It's all about being persevering in terms of your email remarketing. The tone of the next email should escalate from "you forgot something" to "we want you back." This is also the time when you utilize incentives. You might want to employ dynamic filtering or criteria filtering for a more personalized message. And some of these types of categories include like the geolocation or the device type or the total basket value or frequency of visit. So if you're not sure which categories to choose, or I would start with total basket value, because clearly an abandoned cart with a total basket value of $500 is much more valuable than one with a single $20 product. What we've seen, to answer your question, Scott, is that on average, our clients, they see about a 17% conversion rate from the first email sent. It's just a short little reminder message. It keeps the lead warm and demonstrates that we're reaching out to them. And then 24 hours seems to be a good optimum time for the second email, and we see about an 18% conversion rate from the second email in the cascade. And then finally, the third email often tends to be the trickiest one to get right in terms of balancing a sense of urgency with the right incentive. So the third email, we've seen an average conversion rate of 12%, and that happens about 48 hours later.
Right, but those are all real meaningful conversion rates. I mean, getting that right. Yep. Sounds like it can make a big difference.
Yes. Okay, now you know that the user is interested in your site and the products. They visited it and they've gone far enough for you to capture their email. So giving them targeted content will help them to convert. So for example, if you're not able to offer an incentive right away, you don't want to cannibalize your revenues, an alternative is to mirror an already existing incentive on your site. And often that could be like free shipping. Another way you could look at things is to do A/B testing to see if there's room for optimizations and to make adjustments. If you're seeing lower than desired open rates from your remarketing emails, I would try tweaking the subject lines, the images that you're using, even changing the timing of the emails. So for example, right before school vacation, I'm looking for flights for April vacation, and an email with an image of a wishful warm weather scene would be very enticing to me right now. Now we're in the age of big data, so there's no excuse not to craft personalized, relevant emails, and you already know your customer's name, their product feed, and potentially an incentive based on the value of their cart. So you could continue to increase relevancy with and also average total order value by cross-selling and upselling options. So for example, if a customer left a food processor in their cart, you can offer them a discount if they upgrade to a kitchen appliances bundle, or you could give them free shipping if they add in an accessory kit. So there are all sorts of best practices to apply. We move on to our third pain point, which is visitors coming to your site and they're not converting. What we see here are two stats. 97% of online consumers do not make purchases on their first visit to an e-commerce site. However, 3 out of 4, 75% of consumers who abandon online shopping carts, they do plan to return to the site, or they plan to visit a store to complete the purchase. So if 3/4 of the people who abandon their cart are thinking about completing the purchase, there's a good opportunity for ads retargeting. So imagine this: if you own a store with an inventory of 100 products and purchase one prominently placed billboard, you can display one item. The online equivalent of this is a static ad. You could show off your best-selling product or perhaps a new product, and you would gain some conversions. But what about the other 99 products in your inventory? So with dynamic retargeting and dynamic ads, advertisers can showcase their entire product range through one adaptable, reactive ad. And this responsive technology, lets you go further down the purchasing path and understand each user and where they're entering in terms of the funnel. And you can then have more personalized display ads. There are 4 best practices to recommend to customize these ads for each user so that you have the best chance of converting them. first one would be refining your audience targets. So you separate your site visitors according to what they did or didn't purchase, and for those who purchased a specific item, you can consider retargeting them with a complementary product. If you have a wide range of products or services, you could think about appealing to customers in different locations. For example, what appeals to visitors residing in a warmer climate may not be appropriate for those in colder climates at any given time of year. And if potential customers visit a particular page without converting, promoting a sale or other incentives to this customer from the product specific on that page would be most relevant. You set a limit on how often a site visitor is retargeted. For instance, you can limit the number of times a user is exposed to your brand's display ad. You could do it by day, by week, or by month. Depending on how short your sales cycle is, time-sensitive retargeting requires this sense of urgency, so you need to be mindful of time relevance. This is true if you have sales events going on, or certain entertainment events and other one-time types of events. And then next, you should see that using creatives, with strong brand recall is very important. Using multiple creatives to keep display ads fresh would also be important. This serves to keep retargeting campaigns from getting stale and avoids overexposure to any one or two display ads. And finally, I would make sure that you have a very defined call to action so they know exactly what to do. And that depends where they are at the sales funnel. For example, a call to action for those at the very top may be just to learn more, while a call to action for those at the lower end of the tunnel may be to buy now or to request a demo.
So, Terry, this is the retargeting. This is another thing I've seen as I've shopped around the internet, but how do you advise your customers, because this is all about cost benefit, right? The cost of the ads versus the benefit. How do you advise your customers on when to really heavily engage in this retargeting versus, when not to, I guess?
Well, the biggest correlation for retargeting budget would be the unique visitors to your site. How much traffic is already coming to your site, and depending on the volume of traffic, obviously you can then allocate a bigger budget towards it. Often what advertisers will do is they'll have a portion of their budget allocated to prospecting or generating audience to the site, and then another portion to retarget audience that's already hit the site. So it really depends on the key performance metrics that you're aiming for.
Gotcha.
Great. Thank you, Terry, for all those insights and helpful tips. This really highlights the importance of having a presence and engaging the customer on-site and off-site throughout their entire journey. Now I'm going to pass this over to Scott to discuss pain points in the checkout process and how to solve those.
So thanks so much, Samantha, and thanks, Terry. Now that you've totally solved all of our problems on the shopping cart side, I'm going to take a little bit of a look into, we've successfully got this shopper. They want to buy something, and we're getting them to the checkout page, and what are the ways, and this is the real sin, right? You got them, they're ready to buy, and now we're going to lose them here. So let's go into this. We've spent a lot of time at Bluesnap looking at both our customers and looking at global shopping and the issues around checkout abandonment. We've also done some studies, looking at the top 700 sites around the U.S. and what are the challenges they face. And I'd say you can bucket checkout abandonment across three major pain points: the friction on the checkout page, the confidence you're instilling in your shopper, and then issues that can occur on the payment side. And I want to dive into each of these.
Well, Scott, I'm going to shoot the question back over to you. Do you find that each of these pain points stand alone, or are they very similar?
In a lot of ways, Terry, it's sort of the inverse of your answer. They really are unique issues, and we've seen sites that have great, wonderful, frictionless checkout experiences, and yet they don't have their payments set up right, so they're going to have real big problems. Interestingly, though, some of the main solutions can be one solution solves multiple of these. So I'll get into that as we go through each of them in detail. But let's start with friction. Friction is probably the one we've all got a mental image in our mind and can imagine. So you've got to a checkout page, you know what you want to buy, and now they've got a whole bunch of forms you've got to fill out, or it's unclear exactly, how I'm going to pay. There can be friction caused if you're not displaying in local currencies, or if you're not enabling the payment types that are being expected. To put some quantities against it, up on the next slide, you can get a feel for just how big this challenge can be. So, for example, if you don't present in local currency what you're asking them to buy, if you're asking them to pay in dollars, even though what they have in their wallet is British pounds, you're really creating friction at that checkout point, because now they're not totally sure what they're paying. And likewise, you have issues like, how long does it take me to check out? We've seen that it's something like each 7 or 8 seconds of checkout time, you can lose another 10% interest from your shopper. So getting the checkout experience to be as slim as possible and get to the point where you've captured the sale is really, really important. If you go on to the next topic and we look at confidence, this is now where the shopper is about to give you their money. They're hard-earned dough, it's in their wallet, they're ready to give it to you, and yet they're worried about things like potentially security, or they've got one last question, and do they have anyone they can reach out to about that last question? Or things like they're not totally confident they understand the terms and conditions of what you're offering them. So let's look at how some of these can really add up. If you look at, for example, just the issue of language. If I, as a shopper, English isn't my first language, or you're selling to me in Spain, and yet you're putting the terms and conditions and what I should expect in English, if they're not 100% confident that they know what they're buying and what they're signing up for, you can get real big abandonment rates here. And so having these key elements thought through, not just in the front end where you're worrying about the shopping experience, but in the checkout experience, is really, really important.
Well, security is something I, as a shopper, worry about a lot. Can you talk to us about security and what we can do about that?
Yeah, and I think there's sort of 2 layers to this. And the first I would just say is the table stakes. You've got to have on your site the right security systems in place, and what comes with that is often the right logos. We've trained over the years, we've trained online shoppers to expect certain security logos on these sites, particularly on the payment pages. So you have to have those. If you don't, you run real big risks. But even more so, start to think about how security plays in on things like payment types. The real easy example in the United States is there's probably 10 to 15% of US shoppers who want to pay with PayPal. They've been trained well over the years to buy with PayPal online. They've been trained to think that's more secure. We can get into a debate whether it is or isn't, but all that matters is what your shopper thinks. And if you don't offer payment types that shopper is expecting from a security perspective, you run real risk in losing them. So I'd say security's got a couple layers to it. One is just the bases covered, and then the other is thinking in a more nuanced way about what are your shoppers' expectations with regards to security. So let's go to my favorite part of this whole thing as a payments nerd. There's an element of, we've done our job, Terry. We've got someone through the shopping cart, they've loaded it up, they aren't upset with our pain in the butt checkout page, they're really happy with it, so now they're going to hit the buy button. And yet now we run the risk of this transaction not going through. And this isn't because they don't have enough money in their account, to be clear. Those shoppers, there's nothing to be done for them. But when they have enough money, there can still be issues that cause failure at the payment point of payment, And this can be because of how fraud rules are set up, either within the acquiring infrastructure or at the banks themselves. This can be how just the lack of the ability to do failover if there's some kind of transaction interruption. And if we go to the next slide and take a look, this gets very meaningful. So for example, if you are selling in multiple countries and you are not processing locally to where your shopper is, you run as much as a 20% of your transactions are going to get falsely declined. And even having simple things like a retry capability or a failover capability can be a 3 or 5% saving if you can set that up right. So this is that sort of last mile. We've made it all the way to the transaction, and we do not want to lose one here.
Wait, hold on. Maybe you need to explain this to me. You're saying that a credit card might be declined by one bank, but approved by another for the same transaction?
Yeah, so the right way to think of this is your customer's got a bank, they've got a card issued to them by their bank, right? The question of how are you as an e-commerce merchant, how is your gateway routing the transaction to your shopper's bank has a big say in how or whether or not it's going to get approved. So down one path to that shopper's bank, it could get declined, either because the message isn't set up in a way that bank is expecting, or it appears like a foreign transaction, or other issues. Whereas down the other path, it's going to be approved because that bank is getting the data the way they want to see it with enough data to approve it. Making sure you've got this kind of intelligence built into how you route payments is critical, especially as you start to sell internationally, but even just domestically. It matters a lot to have multiple paths. And believe me, we do not want to lose this customer at this point. This is the ultimate sin if we cause abandonment here.
Hardest loss to take, right?
Yes, brutal, absolutely brutal. So, we've set up a way for folks to really measure this part of the problem, the checkout abandonment problem, and this is really going through a 15-question analysis that looks against some of this data that I've gone through here today at a high level, albeit, but that goes through this, allows you to analyze your checkout process and say, where might I be causing checkout abandonment problems with my customers, and really making sure that you're measuring that on a continuous basis.
All right, thank you, Scott. And with that, we have just a few key takeaways from today. So please feel free to tweet these or create your own free key takeaways and tag us in the post. So first off, for email cascades, it's not enough just to send one email to your abandoned users. Users require multiple touch points to make it through their user journey. So be sure you're offering those throughout, with the 20 minutes, the 24 hours, the 48 hours afterwards. You don't know what's scheduled on. They could be getting a snack for their kid. They could have just stepped away. Their favorite show could have come on, and they could have decided to come back and purchase afterwards. You never know what the distraction will be or why they stepped away. So don't stop engaging, because as Terry shared those stats, there's a high probability they will come back and return and complete their purchase. Now, going along with that, Terry pointed out the stat of the 3 of 4 customers who abandoned online shopping carts plan to return. So we all know that customer behavior is changing, and they often treat their carts as wish lists. So use this knowledge to re-engage with them offsite with those dynamic ads on relevant websites to establish strong brand recall. And hopefully you'll inspire them to return to their cart and complete their purchase. Now, as Scott said, there are 3 keys to solving the checkout abandonment: reduce friction, build confidence, and manage payment conversions. And there are a lot of nuances, especially in managed payment conversions. So make sure you're taking care of all those, the basic elements and those behind-the-scenes elements with those security systems and rerouting those payments. Make sure you get all your bases covered so you don't have that ultimate sin and lose that sale. That'd be the ultimate loss, right? They're so close.
Right.
And lastly, make sure, if you're not sure where to start, measure your checkout experience. Use the data at your disposal to know when and where in the process your visitors are dropping off in the funnel. So tools like the Bluesnap calculator can help you quickly identify potential problem areas in your on-site experience and show you where to start making changes and optimizing your experience. Now we have time for just a few questions. Let me take a look here. We've got some good ones. Okay, Scott, this is a good one for you. Does placement of information capture ever influence the rate of abandon?
Yeah, so one of the things we found in our study, one of the things that became popular a few years ago, setting up an account before you let someone buy. And we've found that can cause a lot of abandonment rates. And at the point of checkout, if you've got someone all the way there, don't make them create an account before you capture the payment. Get the payment and then present the option to create an account afterward. Doing that can have a statistically significant difference in what kind of abandonment rates you'll see. But just in general, that's a good rubric to go by. Whatever the minimum amount of information you need to get the transaction complete, do that first, and then follow on with whatever other information you need to sort of continue that relationship with the customer.
That's great advice. Now, Terry, this is a good one for you. Have you noticed an increase in unsubscribe rates when sending more than one email?
Sure. I guess when sending multiple emails, I guess there's a concern that there's an increase in unsubscribes. However, what we've seen in our campaigns is that there really actually is no significant difference in terms of an email cascade between first, second, or third. So if they were going to unsubscribe, it looks like they would do it already.
Right.
Great to know. All right, we've got time for one last question. How do you account for mobile customers? Terry, what would you say for that?
Well, we all know that mobile is taking over the world, so and that trend is not going to stop anytime soon. Now, I know when I look at emails on my iPhone, if something looks off or funny, I just immediately delete it. And all that is a function of how it's set up, where, you know, it's hard to scroll through, hard to read because the text is tiny or the image is distorted. So one way to address this for mobile users is to really create a responsive template, a responsive design that adapts to the width of your screen and the size of that device. And because space is a premium, the other thing you could do is just to keep the messaging short and simple.
So, and I'll take it a step further. When you think about a checkout experience on mobile, form factor matters and responsive design matters, but if you've just done that, you haven't created a mobile checkout experience. There are expectations changing quickly from consumers on how they pay on mobile, and many of them do not want to be pulling out card information and then trying to type it into a mobile device when that very information is maybe resident in a mobile wallet that's already on their phone. So thinking about payment types and how payment types might be different that you display on your mobile checkout page versus what you display on an online checkout page is really, really important. We see this as probably one of the biggest factors that will change the way conversions go online, particularly in mobile, over the next couple of years. So thinking about this now is really important for merchants.
All right, great questions today. So that wraps up the webinar. Thank you so much to our attendees for joining us, and the recording will be available to you by the end of the week. And please check back in the future for more Bluesnap and the interactive webinars. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thanks, Samantha. Thanks, Terry.
Yeah, thanks.